Check 1, 2, test, test, test. Check 1, 2, test, test, test.
love amongst all living beings. Let there be peace and love amongst all living beings. Om Shanti Shanti. Welcome to Satsang. So I thought we'd start off tonight with a kind of a practical meditation, right? This is something that we could try out because it's very easily accessible, happens very quickly, and if you're in the middle of having like some kind of difficult time, emotional time, just not being able to find your balance, this is like a quick little meditation hack if we're ready for that, all right? Something that we can access right away. And what makes it easy is that we're not trying to get somewhere in this meditation. That's a problem we often get in meditation. I know for myself, I often get in meditation and go, I'm just not where I want to be. You know, I'm agitated. I'm like, my mind is going crazy. I'm thinking about all the stuff I need to do. It's like, where's my meditation, right? What if whatever was going on at the moment was your meditation? Well, that sounds good in theory, but it certainly doesn't seem like a meditation if you're like just all agitated and upset. So the hack is here, instead of trying to get into a different place, like a place, you know, where your mind is quiet and you're feeling peace. I mean, I feel like if you're there, you don't even need to meditate. You're doing great. Instead of trying to get into a different space, what we're going to go through tonight is actually just taking a bigger perspective. That's all. Just a bigger perspective. Now, we don't even realize most of the time that our perception, the way that we're seeing, the way that we're hearing, the way we feel through our nervous system of our body, we kind of don't realize that it's like set in this certain place. And it kind of stays there all the time, right? Now, sometimes you might get in good meditation and move from that place, but our default is I am inside this body and I'm feeling everything in my nervous system. And when things are really good, I'm experiencing pleasure. When things are not so great, I'm experiencing displeasure or even pain, right? So what would happen if we just opened everything up for a moment? A different perspective of our everyday walking perspective that is, when I say it's an easy access, it is your natural state of consciousness. One way of looking at it is your natural state of consciousness is your base. Most people don't realize that we are in meditation all of the time. But there is so much stuff going on over our meditation, it acts as interference. So we can't feel the meditative state. You see, if it's true that our true nature is love and peace and goodness and expansiveness, if that's true, why are we not experiencing that? If it is our nature, why is it we're not experiencing that every moment of every single day, in every situation? So we're going to get some insight into this meditation on that. So you could do this meditation either eyes open or eyes closed. If you do have your eyes open, my suggestion is that in Aikido they have a term called soft eyes. And what it means is that instead of looking out at a particular thing, you diffuse your focus out. So you're not looking at any particular thing. And it's soft. So if you want to close your eyes, that's fine too. But if they are open, I do suggest soft eyes, all right? So like we want instant access, so I'm not going to go through the thing about, oh, pay attention to your breathing, relax your body, any of that stuff, all right? We're going to go right to the heart of things, to your natural state. You are not contained within that body. Your energy field and your consciousness goes out in every direction. Like right now, what I'd like you to do, and this is the first instruction, okay? Is like I'd like you to become aware of the space of the room. The space behind you, which you can't see, so you have to kind of feel it. The space to the sides of you, the space in front of you, and space above you. Just take a moment to shift our awareness from a body-centered, here I am, to becoming awareness as the space of the room. You flip these words around, you could say it's the space of consciousness. What if the space of consciousness was actually space that was aware? That's how it's classically looked at in Hinduism. Space is not just empty space, it's alive. It's alive because it perceives. And it perceives itself as the space it is, as well as perceives what is going on in the nervous system of the body. So I want everybody to just notice when you make that shift from here I am sitting in this chair to here I am in my true self, as a space of consciousness. And, let's just make it as big as the room right now. If you notice that space of the room, that awareness, that is a space of awareness, you'll notice that it's still. Now there are things that are moving throughout it, like thoughts, but the things that are moving through it doesn't disturb the space. The space remains the space no matter what is going on in it. And we're not talking about like vibes or something. We're talking about, those are all things that are contained within the space. We're talking about the purity of space. It's a space that happened, that was present before the beginning of the universe. And it's a space that will continue. It will see galaxies coming and going in millennia. Dimensions coming and going. All movement throughout it, but it in itself remains untouched. So this is the meditation that's going on every moment in your life. That we got a lot of stuff going on throughout our day that takes us away from that. It is something that is already occurring, which is the space of consciousness is aware. And it's perceiving. Right now, it's perceiving the space of the room. That body is just one of the objects that are in the room right now. And when you notice that, take note of this. Kind of interesting. That at this point, if there's any troublesome thoughts, there's a sense that they're not as important anymore. Because when there is a shift from the space of the personality and mind and body to your true self as pure awareness, you'll notice that all thoughts and everything going on about that body's life. My teacher Papaji said, when seen from this perspective, it has little or nothing to do with who you are, who you really are. And he said, when I'm saying little, I'm being generous. It's a story that we're playing in our life that we identify with, that we suffer and find joys from, all depending on how things are going in our life, right? That's how it kind of works. Oh, it's a wonderful dinner. I'm just having such a good time. Loving being with my friends. Oh man, this is horrible. I'm with my family. It's like, that's just like bad news, right? You are actually an effect of your environment. But here is this place that is always resting, always aware, always present, and it just takes a finger snap. Sometimes I tell people, if you try to stay there for longer than a second, you're trying too hard. Get a glimpse of it, that's enough. It'll put everything in perspective. Okay, here's the last piece quickly. Is in this space of awareness, this space that is aware, that is perceiving everything that's happening in the room right now, including the body that's in that chair. Now we're going to incorporate the body a little more. What I want you to do is while staying open in that space of awareness, put your attention on your heart right now. And sometimes people say, oh, I don't know how to do that, I'm not sure. Well, I always find it's useful to recall a time that love was really real for you. That it was present. You know, we all have maybe one or two or three of those really, really special moments where love was really present. And when you go back to that time, you might feel that your heart is open. It's this kind of free flow of receiving and giving love. This perfect balance. It's just so present, so now. So notice what it's like when you put your attention on your heart. And even recalling that memory, as if you could mentally transport yourself to go back there. Notice how it shifts or changes the space of consciousness. There is a sense of like detachment, from this space of awareness. You're detached from your body, you're detached from your story. But here in the heart, all of a sudden it grounds everything. Brings it to this moment in this room, in this body. It's the feminine. There's a goddess named Devi Baba. She's in many temples in India. Also, if you're familiar with Amrita Mandamayi, she, in every visit, does a Devi Baba ceremony. This is so important. You see, before there was just pure consciousness. this impersonal, infinite, at peace awareness that was aware of its infiniteness and aware of its timelessness. And then came Devi Bhava. Devi is a word for, in Sanskrit word for goddess, and Bhava is breath. Bhava is breath. And they say that through that universe, that, not even the universe, the empty space of pure awareness, came manifestation, a life-giving force called Shakti, the elemental place of this life-giving force is love. So now there is love moving through everything, and that is the feminine. So all of a sudden it's not just empty space. There's now goodness and compassion and generosity, purity, love. So now if your eyes are closed, what I'd like you to do is to very slowly open them. And if they are open, as you start to open, make sure that it is like your inner vision is still open. In other words, you're not looking out, but looking out in this kind of diffused way. So you can keep that sense of expansiveness and that place in the heart. You'll notice that it's not as strong with your eyes open. But what I can tell you is it's much more useful. Because you could walk around and interact with the world in the space of open consciousness, anchored to the heart. And I guarantee you, it will change your interactions. I don't know why, but this John Denver song is coming out. I mean, I was a big fan of John Denver, and you understand when he was out, he was very kind of uncool to like, right? But I always loved him. And there's a song that just comes to mind, some words to his songs. It just comes to me coming out of this meditation. It's from Rocky Mountain High. The lines are, his sight is turned inside himself. His sight is turned inside himself to try to understand the serenity of a clear blue mountain lake. So let's Om together 3 times, please. Namaste. Welcome to Satsang. So by way of introductions, God, what has it been, like 15 years, man? A long time. It's cool, great seeing ya. Doug was one of my big supporters of this website. He always let people know when I was in San Diego, so I really appreciate that. Thank you for that service. Haven't been here for a while. In fact, it's kind of interesting that this is a good kind of a way of introductions. First of all, way of introductions, I want to first introduce my teachers, sort of. This man here, I know this is a really mixed group, like you've been doing this stuff forever. I don't know, some people have never heard of Ramana Maharshi before, so I thought, let's just go from ground zero and go up from there, right? His name is Harilal Punja. But we affectionately called him Papaji, right? He was in northern India, and I first saw him in 1997, and 1904, and was seeing him off and on until he died in 97. So he was a direct disciple of this man right here, named Ramana Maharshi. If you haven't heard of him before, he's considered in southern India to be the greatest modern saint of our time. But, his ashram is not on the spiritual tours, you have these spiritual tours and you go to all these different places, all India. His place is not one of them. In fact, he was really big on not his ashram not becoming a thing, right? He, like Papaji, who never wanted an ashram. Repeatedly, people were trying to build them for him. He just says, no, ashrams create hierarchies, create politics, create I'm somewhere you're not. And he says just there's so much nonsense that happens. Even if it starts off purely in time, oftentimes, they'll go south somehow, and you start getting all of the dirt on it. So he says, just better not to deal with it. Now, Ramana had a little different approach. He sat down next to his mother and they built an ashram around him. One funny story is that he was, someone was confronting him about something or other, because, he was open when he was there. Anybody can come. And somebody came to him and said, how is it that you allow all this nonsense, to go on in your ashram? And he said, first of all, this is not my ashram. And he said, well, why are you sitting in that chair in front of everybody? And he pointed to his devotees and he said, they make me sit here. He lived in a cave for two different caves for 27 years. So, he wasn't the most social guy, Because he was at the top of the mountain, he saw very few people. Or not quite the top, but he's, a journey up the mountain. When he got down to ground level, and they built that ashram down and wrote books about it. One guy's named Paul Brunton, and there's another Secret Somethings of India, Secret Sages of India, and they started writing about him, and people started coming. And he would pray to Arunachala, which is a sacred mountain that was his god. I always appreciated that a guru is a mountain. I mean, a lot of people don't understand that, but I remember when I was leaving my Native American circle, and I told the Rapo elder, he was the head of he was the chief of the Western States. I was in that circle for about 6 years, and I told him I'm leaving the circle to go to India. And he said, India? Why India? And I said, there's a mountain that is calling me. And he just got this huge grin on his face. This is, I get that. Go with my blessings. Yeah. This mountain Arunachala was Ramana's guru. And in my time, I got a place in Tiruvannamalai in 2000 and have maintained a place there since then, property and whatever. It's so clear that this guru here, which is the mountain, never is really up to any mischief. I have a litany of, like, I started my spiritual path in 1967, and with a Zen Roshi, who's very beautiful. Suzuki Roshi, his name was, and then the nonsense started happening. After he died, there was, his successor, Baker Roshi, was kind of taking over the lineage. And then we find out Baker Roshi's been having this affair with somebody's wife for the past 6 years, I mean, I don't have to go into all of them, but there's a lot of gurus that I've seen that later on, I mean, I was living in Berkeley at the time, and I was going to the City Yoga Ashram to see Baba Muktananda, every day. And then all that nonsense came out about him sleeping with all the girls, and it's just like one story after another, and it's like, these are people I trusted, people I had total faith in, and find out this is the proudest thing I can say about my guru is he's never up to no good. He just silently transmits an energy where they say, quiets your mind and opens your heart. So being a great lover of power spots all over the world, that's kind of what I did, and for a good part of my life. And I saw that every place kind of is special because of what we'd say, each one has an energy signature, a certain kind of thing it's putting out. And when I found Arunachala, my search stopped for all those places, because I found that no matter how powerful and how magical, or going in between, seeing space beings, or going in between, dimensions and all that stuff, I found the most important thing for me in life is for my mind to be quiet and my heart to be open. So I found this is it, So that was back in 1999, my first visit there. My first visit there was actually 97. In 98, I had established residence there, and, a year later, I bought an acre of property, and now it's my primary home. Because I feel like, where else can I really just receive what Ramana Maharshi calls a transmission, like a radio tower, that just jams the mind, he said. And once the mind is jammed, once it's like not busy, without any coaxing at all, the heart arises. So in ways of introductions, I should also mention too that my name Ramana was given to me by Papaji. He was bugging me all the time. You need a new name, and I was like, nah, it's new age stuff. I've done that already. Been there, done that. But he just made it so difficult. I finally said, okay, put in a submission to change my name, and he gave me the name Ramana, which don't know how to make sense of that, except it's been both a curse and a blessing. What if you had the name of one of the purest saints in India, right? Try living up to that. You're always going to be falling behind, right? But I do find out just having the name Ramana for people who are interested in Ramana Maharshi's teachings, it kind of rings a bell for them, you know. So I don't have a picture of Arunachala. It was my biggest picture, and I actually didn't fit in the box, and I was going to grab it and put it in my car, and I left without it. So the most important character here, you have to visualize in your mind right now. But people do tell me that I bring the mountain to them. And that's probably the most important thing I could really emphasize right now. If there's anything that you're going to get of any value from tonight or any work with me, it's not going to be in what I say. I mean, you might have some insights. Oh yeah, or maybe something kind of got solved for you. Oh yeah, that was a good little tidbit. Or maybe you're just being entertained, right? Which I hope so, anyway. But the most important thing in a satsang is what is said underneath the words, what is transmitted. What is happening in the space in between thoughts? Explore for a moment this 1 second tapping in to the silence. Don't try to do more than that, because the mind will be there. But Papaji used to say that when you have a glimpse of the timeless and the infinite, just a glimpse, he says it shifts everything from that moment on. Not necessary to keep it maintained. A glimpse is all it needs. So hopefully, since a satsang is really pointing to that glimpse, hopefully that will be happening for you tonight, and that's where the real value is. It's like, without you even knowing it, the inner architecture of your psyche starts to vibrate at a different place, and things actually start getting rearranged. Introducing myself, why am I here? That's a great story. Because I heard from, I was just surprised, to hear from you. I was doing a very rare, and we're talking rare, live stream on Facebook. I've done 2 in my life. This is one of them, right? And it was just a simple thing. It said, I was reading about, I can press this button right on my phone. It's like all of a sudden I could, people could see me live. I thought, let's try this out. So I pressed the button, and I said, hi, everybody. I've been in India for the last almost 2.5 years, and I've just made it to San Diego, and just saying hello, right? So I didn't know if anybody was even watching it, right? But guess who was watching it? So do you want to pick it up from here?
Yeah. Let me just change the camera here.
There you are.
There's me. I'm going to go with a bigger view. So I met Ramana about 10 years ago, and I actually, the first time was watching Buddha at the Gas Pump, your interview.
Oh, okay.
With Rick Archer.
Mm-hmm.
And then I noticed that you were here in Encinitas and that you were giving private sessions. And so, without thinking, which is the best thing to do, I called and, come over. You can have a session in like an hour. I said, well, okay, drive right over.
This is in Encinitas, right?
And I had no idea. This was in Encinitas, and I had no idea what was about to happen. I said, well, maybe I'll just have this, conversation or whatever. And then in that room, you started connecting all these wires to me.
Yeah. I use biofeedback.
Biofeedback. And so now I'm connected to a lie detector.
Right.
And like the mind was going crazy. The mind was going crazy. And I
What's
had
he
no
gonna
idea
find
what
out
was
about
about
me?
to happen and the questions that we were asking. And talk about mind blowing. Mind blowing. So, mind blowing meaning like all of a sudden I didn't have a mind. I was this consciousness. I was this awareness that was bigger that wasn't trapped in this body. I went to the very far edges of the universe.
You
and,
did.
And then I stepped beyond. And so, like the glimpse that we are all looking for, like this glimpse that, the way I'll put it in my words is that I am loved. I am created in love. There is a love that is coming to me, that's coming through me, that all of a sudden this is a loving universe. And it's all love.
Yes.
And it was a beautiful, parting of the veil. And that kind of a glimpse, I don't think I could have got there without having that session with you. I mean, some people get it different ways. And so right after that, Carlos and we started opening up the meditation group to the public. And this is kind of the chain of events that happen. I experienced many different spiritual events in my life. Since I was 17, it's been this one beautiful experience after another. But then there's different glimpses. And like Ramana was saying, once you see it, you can't go back. Right. You just it's there.
You can't forget that you saw it.
1 + 1 is 2. I could never undo that. So that's kind of and just recently, I was on the phone. I don't know who I was with, maybe Carlos again back there. I was on the phone with somebody and I was telling him I'm going to India and I'm going to Arunachala. I'm going to Ramana's ashram. And the phone rings, another line. It's Ramana. And so
I got the vibe.
I said, I have to take this call. And so we have been planning to do this for 2 years. We've been planning, or longer, things were happening, different things got in the way of it, but, we said, let's lock down a date. Let's pin it down. Let's do it. And that's what that conversation was.
And the fact that you're going to be here right after India, it's yes, it's going to even be stronger now for everybody here.
So fun. So that is the magical universe that we live in. Thank you.
Yeah, it was so funny for me. He calls and, it's who are you again? I didn't even remember the session. Oftentimes, I work with so many people, and it's wonderful that something like this can happen because I really don't kind of follow up a lot. I'm always kind of surprised, and especially when I'm doing a session that's oh man, that was horrible, man. Should I give their money back? I mean, just oh, just horrible, And I remember I was working in Hawaii. I oftentimes work in Hawaii. We were island jumping, and there was a person that same person I was telling myself that story about. It's so I didn't even want to bring it up, but she brought it up, and I thought now she'll ask for her money back now, right? That's what I was thinking. And she said that session changed the direction of my life. And without getting, there's a lot of details about a nonprofit she was doing. She wasn't making money, but she was in her heart. But she really wanted to go to, this whole thing, and nothing was working out. So we kind of ended it with, well, hopefully things will work out for you. Well, it turns out everything worked out for her. That she did the nonprofit work and was super successful at her endeavors. I mean, everything got done. And they all knew she wanted to go to Europe, so they put a fund together up and to pay for her trip to Europe. So she said, I look back and I say there were some things in that session that just kind of rang a bell later on. And I said, oh, yeah, I even have a term for that, and that is a time bomb gets set. And then when it goes off, it goes off. I remember there's sometimes a very difficult step that people do when it's actually the moment of awakening, where I ask people to, as the true, pure awareness, for that awareness that is always kind of using your body, and since sight is directional, it's like looking through your eyes from behind. When that looks back at itself, that is actually there's a teacher, Nisargadatta Maharaj, that defined an awakening. He said an awakening takes place when the true perceiver becomes aware of its existence through its direct perception of itself. And that's a tricky one, Not everybody gets that in a session, So I thought it was really funny. This woman 7 years later writes me an email and says, I got the piece yesterday. It's like amazing. I am consciousness, looking back at itself and being aware of itself. This is an awakening. So God knows what's going to happen, I've just kind of left it all to Goddess these days, right? So I thought I could just maybe take some questions now. Kind of more in a formal satsang kind of deal. If somebody has a question that they would like to explore, this is the opportunity to do that. You just raise your hand if you have something. Something you're yes, please. Oh, could you throw him a mic here?
Who had the question?
Not so much a
Yeah, it's
question,
actually kind of hard for
just
me
a
to hear
feedback.
too, so this is
Okay.
perfect.
I just wanted to give you feedback that I feel that you set up few bombs here tonight already.
Beautiful.
And when you were describing that state of mind that you wish to transmit during your satsang, I felt like that already happened.
Wow, beautiful.
So thank you for that.
Thank Goddess. Thank you for
Yeah,
that.
and the
Beautiful.
question may be connected how to maintain it
Yeah.
with softly open eyes.
Yeah, actually, that's a question that I'd like to actually address. It's kind of like getting cleared up what we really want out of our spiritual work. If you're looking for a particular experience, like let's say some peace or love or expansion, that kind of thing, that happens in the realm of experience, right? And if we go into Hinduism and go kind of branch off from Hinduism, which is a part of Hinduism called Vedanta, and then if you go down even a level further, it's Advaita Vedanta. And in Advaita Vedanta, they say that experience is not that important. Now that's like, wait a minute. I mean, you could say I've been working for decades to get into these beautiful spiritual experiences. You know, what they said is there's a law of experience, and that is that experiences have a beginning and a middle and an end. No space that you're going to get to is going to remain in that isn't going to remain for long. I mean, you could have a good run of it. I mean, you can maybe have a 10-day good run, you know, but basically it's going to come to an end. So what the mind does with that is, if we can imagine like an oscilloscope, right? In an oscilloscope, there's an etched line that is in the middle of the scope. People know what I'm talking about here? Yeah, of course you do. So we might say that what our mind does with that is, when the oscilloscope wave goes into the positive, then we're thinking that's a good experience and we want more of that. When it starts going down to, let's just say, the neutral point, you go, well, at least I'm not upset, but you know, it's no big deal here. It was way better up here. And then when the sine wave goes down into the negative, it's like, we're not feeling so great, right? So if you take this oscilloscope as an example, that is experience. It is going up and down, up and down, up and down, and we start to have benchmarks about what good is. I mean, you know, it's the top. It doesn't have to be that, you know. It doesn't have to be plus 90, you know. It could be plus 35 or 40. I can live with that, you know. Just like when it goes down the negative, it's like, well, at least I didn't totally lose it, you know. It was not a minus 100, you know. It was a 50. I could live with. I mean, that's what the mind does with all of that. So the idea in Advaita Vedanta is that is a bad measuring stick, that whole thing of ups and downs. What their suggestion is to keep your eye on the line, keep your attention on the line that's etched into the glass. It's always, it doesn't change. It's etched in, right? It's not moving. So what you start encountering is a whole different kind of game, that when you're not basing it on experience, it's interesting that you find that a lot of the time, not much is going on. I mean, if you're at that 0 point where it's not going up or down, it's like, this is kind of boring. And it can feel that way, but boring usually, I find. I used to be a psychotherapist, so, you know, this whole idea about boredom is like a suppression of anger. People are bored because there's a suppression of something. That's why, I mean, I did mention that the biofeedback was like part of a lie detector, but that's not why I use it. I'm curious to find out where emotional charge is being released or building up. And every time it's building up, there is something that is being suppressed. And it is unconscious. I mean, most of the time when I ask people, is there something that's being suppressed right now? They say no. I feel good, but in the meantime, this meter is going, press down. So I said, you know, I use the old psychology thing. Well, let's just say if there were something you suppressed, what might that be? And when they actually start examining, because we're not used to looking at unexamined feelings and emotions, especially unpleasant ones, right? And that's the reason they're being suppressed in the first place. So what we start to find is that neutral is this amazing place of peace. It's an amazing place of synchronicity. It is a place where the mind actually stops long enough where the antennas open up to everything that's in your environment. It's so interesting that, I admittedly, through the 80s, for 9 years, I worked with someone named Shakti Gawain, and she wrote a book called Creative Visualizations. And in 1980, we had a Fellowship of the Awakening in Berkeley center. So, it was all about creating your reality, positive intentions, and all this kind of stuff. I was religious about teaching this. And when I met Papaji, all of a sudden, this question started coming up that never came up before, which is, who is doing the creating? We could say, well, it's me, but I got my guides, I got all my good stuff, But really, when you get down to it, it's you, the personality, that's trying to arrange something in the environment so it works out better for you. And of course, other people. It's always got to be the other people thing, too. Or even other people. That's good. But what we find out in neutral, here's a Grateful Dead song, all right? And I don't know how many people in the Grateful Dead, but I'm a kid of the 60s, and the 16 years old going to the Fillmore, 4 nights a week, Winterland, Avalon Ballroom. That's what you did when you were a teenager back then. So the Grateful Dead song that they talk about a storyteller, a song about a storyteller. And the line is, the storyteller makes no choice. Soon you won't even hear his voice. His role is to enlighten, not to master. Nothing really needs to be mastered. And I have to say, for like almost a decade, I got in front of groups like this and talked about mastery, creating your own universe. Now I'm finding in this neutral, there is this graceful unfolding that is just, it's almost like people ask me, well, how do I know I'm really on the path? This is a question that comes up. My mind says yes, but this says no. This is my answer. When I want to know where I am on the path, what I do is I look at my feet. That's the path. You are never not on the path. It may be something that your mind doesn't like, may create a lot of challenges for you, whatever. You could wish and wish and wish that didn't happen that way, But when you're in neutral, it's almost like surfing, It's like there is this unfolding of the moment. And people ask me, well, how do you make I'm going to Hawaii for 6 weeks, and doing some sound songs there. It's like I haven't worked there for a long time. I'd like to go back. And they said, well, how do you even make your ticket? You have to make it, you have to buy a ticket and choose the time, right? And it's like that doesn't change anything. I just find like the next step on my path, and I always get help. My sister says, oh, by the way, Southwest is having a super cheap flight to Hawaii. So I go to Southwest. It's holy crap. I got a round trip ticket for $319, man. We're good from San Diego. So it just kind of unfolds, right? So that's neutral. And if we can just shift the idea from we're doing our benchmarks of experience for good and bad, spiritual, non-spiritual experiences, we can just like throw that out the door and keep our attention focused on that which does not change, which is a very basic Hindu teaching, is keep your attention on that which never changes.
I have a question.
Please.
Thank you for being here.
No,
So-
thank you for allowing me to be here.
So in 2003, I had what is most commonly called an ascension. And I literally saw my ego or body personality or whatever leave. I actually thought I was going to be dead, but I wasn't. I was just in what you would call that neutral space. And I I had students all over the world at the time. I did classes, seminars, I did newsletters, all that sort of thing. But when this happened, for 7.5 months, I was just in this, what I called contemplative state. I was living in Maui at the time, which was a wonderful place to be doing that. And I would sit in my room or on my lanai and just look out at the beauty. And my office manager would come into my room and go, "What are you doing in here? It's 100 degrees. I'm looking out the window. And she'd say, "You can't be in here. Have you had anything to eat today?" I don't know. So I was wonderful in that state. It was just bliss. It was peace. But everyone around me was very worried because I was, in sort of their perspective, I was comatose.
That's funny.
I wasn't comatose. So after 7.5 months, when my children, my students, my office manager that's not making any money because I'm not making any money, are really, really concerned, I thought, well, okay, I think this is more like when you've crossed over what it would be like being in this state.
Good point. That's
And-
like that.
And if I'm still in a body, is there something else I should care about? Because I was really attached to nothing. I mean, just nothing. And again, I was wonderful. Everyone wasn't. So I thought, okay, so if I'm going to be here, I have to figure out something to care about, something to have passion for. Oh, such a hard question. It was just so hard. And so finally I thought, well, what did I used to care about before this? Men. I used to care about men. So I actually called in my Maui soulmate and began to have a relationship. But my point is that for me, at least, being in that state was wonderful. But to me, it was more like what I thought being on the other side was. And I've had a near-death experience, so there's, some correlation between all that. And then I hear you, I could not have made, or would not have made, not could not have made. I would not have made tickets to go anywhere else. I would not have done something that would have been, I was being rather than doing anything. So I'd love to hear your comments on that.
Couple. First of all, just kind of an entertaining thing. If you know the story of Eckhart Tolle,
Yes.
he ended up on a park
Right,
bench. Man.
right.
So it's like, a lot of people were saying he wasn't coping well, but he was coping amazingly, So it's just a side comment. I thought
So
that was
better to have it
interesting.
happen in Maui than on a park bench.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a little warmer.
Yeah.
But what I was going to kind of bring up, a little serious note, is oftentimes people just as an aside, there's a book that I really love. It's written by a woman named Suzanne Siegel, and she wrote a book called Collision with the Infinite. And what happened for her is she was a student of Gangaji, if you know who that is. She's been around here. And she went into this place of no self. So she said it was very odd that she continued her life. She finished her doctorate in psychology. She had children. She did everything that's full fully living life. But she said there was nobody there. It was like I was talking about this kind of unfolding going on where there is not an I that's identifying. She wasn't Suzanne, right? She was just this vehicle that is moving through life with a no self. And you can imagine that was really upsetting and disturbing to her, right? She wasn't at peace. She was worried about herself. So I think this is the best move she made. She went to go see Papaji. And Papaji told her, you're living in a natural state. All you need is a little more integration now, right? It's always good to have a little bit of me in there. Do you know what I mean by that? I mean, she had no me, right?
I hear what you're saying, and I would.
And you know what that's like.
Yeah. Hi.
There's no me.
Right. It was wonderful at the time, but again, I wondered, what am I still doing in a body?
Yeah.
Having this experience, especially after 7.5 months, and is there more I can be doing while I'm in a physical body?
Right.
And there was. I mean, I've done lots since then, but.
So that kind of answers your question too, right? Papaji's suggestion to Suzanne was to introduce a small piece of the separate sense of self that has desires, that has goals, that has, but he says just bring in a slice. And that slice was enough to give her life meaning.
I like what Dr. David Hawkins said that I found after all of this was that
right.
and in order to be, unless you have an ego, unless you're green on this planet, like you make chlorophyll, you have to have a little bit of an ego to function, to exist. Really.
My graduate degree is in transpersonal psychology, and the way that we say that is you've got to be somebody before you could be nobody. And, coming from a psychological point of view, I worked with Stan Groff for a while in his Spiritual Emergence Network. And we would go into institutions. And we would actually find out, they're going to laugh about it, but it's really true, that if they don't have a stable ego, to have this huge, you obviously had a stable ego, but if you have a lot of breaks in your development and just don't have a stable ego, you start getting hit with the infinite, and you go over the top, and it looks a lot like schizophrenia. So my work, with the Spiritual Emergence Network was to go into it's the institution and try to sort out the schizophrenics with the people who are having a spiritual emergence.
Interesting.
Is it a big percentage of those?
Pardon?
Is there a big percentage of those?
Yeah, there was enough of a percentage that, that the medications they were giving them for schizophrenia was not helping them even a little bit, that they really needed to be told that you're having a spiritual emergence, that this is a crisis you're going through. You're not crazy, And once they get oriented, they get released. All right, any other questions? I love the questions, thank you. Yes, please.
Quick
Please,
question.
yes, please.
So, how did you make the shift from creating your own reality to being the neutral?
Yeah. It actually came out of years and years of doing psychotherapy in a traditional model. Because one of the things that we used to teach was if you want to create something and it's not being created, you must have a counter intention, right? something that's blocking that. So a lot of the work was, let's find out what the block was. Well, it's because, when I was 4 years old, it's like my daddy did this or my mommy did this, or because I had this trauma when I was 10 years old. And I was so in the middle of that myself. I started Gestalt work in 1968, to give you an idea. That's when Fritz was still around, teaching it. And I had just gone over and over and over, banging on pillows, like even throwing up in front of everybody, like releasing, whatever, just doing all the chair work. And then it just kept going. And later on, when Bradshaw came around, oh, it's your inner child. You got to save your inner child. So, go this whole thing about, okay, now I don't know if you know about Bradshaw's work. You're probably mostly too young for it, but some of us still remember it. He was like the Bible on how to work with this kind of trauma. So I came to a realization first, and I didn't know where to go next. The realization I had was a myth that is very prevalent in psychology, which is, and then it moves over to the New Age. Now it's counter intentions. So you got to do the same kind of psychological work, or you can do psychic. I did the Berkeley Psychic Institute course, and we're cutting cords, and we're going through saving the inner child. We're doing all this stuff, and so that we can let go of our obstacles for getting what we really want. So the myth was that there's an onion, and it has a center of an onion. And if you just start peeling off the layers of the onion, you'll eventually get to the center and the whole thing will be cleared up. That's the myth. After doing that work for like 25 years, I realized that, especially when I started getting the hypnosis and past life regression and started working with these people that are kind of tuning into like a universal consciousness, so what's happening for them is not really just them, they're really kind of taking in a whole thing like that. So it's like, if we're dealing with a level like that, there is no center. I mean, you can do you could just do that forever and still not get to the center. So I realized that was a myth. Going back into the past and like curing this and healing that, I do feel that's really important work, okay? And I don't think, and I believe that it is perfect for what, if you are involved in that work, that is what you should be doing, because there's some ego strengthening in that. It's just good. You learn stuff, you get insights, you make positive changes, all good, all right? But I realized that it wasn't going to take people where I wanted them to go. Just another layer. So I didn't know what to do at that point. I was kind of lost, because it just felt like I could not get in front of a group anymore or do private sessions with people, with this being the premise. And I had a whole institute, I should tell you that too. I had we were doing like mid six figures. We were really successful, and had a institute in transpersonal psychology in Boulder. Did fabulous. I met Papaji and walked away from the whole thing, because I couldn't do that, but I did have something else. And he said that freedom happens in a moment. He says it's not next week, it's not next year, it's not this lifetime. He says it can happen in a second. So that got my attention. And there was just a lot of people around Papaji who kind of had the same background as me and about the same age as me. Like we were, doing all our spiritual stuff in the 60s, and, they're all old timers. So it was like a big family there. And I saw people, quote unquote, waking up. And that doesn't happen with a lot of teachers, where you actually make a permanent shift in awareness, where you don't ever go back and every moment of your life is lived differently. So I saw that going on around Papaji. I knew it was a rare bird. And just being the person I am, I said, I'm fed up with all this New Age stuff. It's just like, show me the goods, And he did, but not in any way that I thought would happen, right? In fact, it was hell, all right? I got the story in my book, I don't want to get into like all the story stuff now, but when you get into the energy of Arunachala, when you start tuning into Ramana Maharshi, they said you can really let go of everything, because from that point on, you're caught in a net of grace. And the best recommendation we can give, being caught in that net of grace, is to just relax. It's the best thing you can do. Just relax. Go for the ride. I remember there's another spiritual teacher here in LA, Robert Adams. He later moved to Sedona. He said in one of his satsangs, he said, you can come to God like a cat that is hanging on to a screen door. Or you can just follow the river and not do anything. Let it carry you. So it's a good piece of wisdom. And, I think that for myself, that whole kind of hanging on thing has kind of disappeared in my life, I used to go through this process about what's the worst thing that can happen. And I would have all these horrible things, right? Now I go through what's the worst thing that can happen. It's like, okay, so what? All right, I can deal with that one. But we are living in this accelerated world. It's like all kinds of things are happening that have, environmentally, personally, that are bringing everything to the table. I mean, things that you wouldn't even expect, like I started buying like sympathy cards, like by the pack, because I was losing so many people who were close. Just random things. My best friend's daughter, died of cancer. She was like 33. My cousin, this is just 2 weeks ago, I guess up in Northern California, they're having a lot of winds and stuff. Well, she was going by a shopping mall, and there was a big sign that just blew off the wall and hit her on the head. And the next thing you know, she's in the hospital having brain surgery. And now she's in a coma, and they don't know if it's, if her brain is ever going to come back. I mean, there's people that are close to me, that are personal. So there's just a hell of a lot of stuff going on. And I don't want to in any way like say, oh, everything will be, peaches and roses, You will be challenged. Everyone is challenged. And the way I look at it right now is the most important thing we can do is get life skills about how to negotiate this, And kind of the summary of that is the solution to all of that does not lie in you. That's the biggest mistake we could make about that. It has to do with me. It doesn't have to do with you. Please.
No, no. Oh, well, I was going to ask a question. I was talking with the camera to him, but obviously.
Lisa, behind you.
Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh,
Well, my question has more to do with global responsibility.
Yes, good
We
question.
can all see that much is happening, and we're all here for a reason, essentially.
Right.
And obviously, this dear saint, and probably your teacher too, were very invested. I mean, every day I walk by his little picture, and I feel him,
Yeah.
you know, feeding me, you know, like a little bird. And it's so sweet. And so, would you like to comment on? He took the responsibility very seriously. I mean, everybody.
Well, to let you know that you're probably going to get a very non-satsang teacher's answer to this, all right? I'm coming from a place in the 60s that we're in the streets, you know. There was the Vietnam War going on at the time. I was drafted. I had friends coming back in a box, or either that or like totally strung out in drugs and ruined, and people just not even paying in, as if it's not happening, you know. And the whole war, about the whole thing about the Vietnam War being, you know, they call it a domino effect. If Vietnam won, all these other ones, which it didn't happen. We all knew that was bullshit. It was all about the poppies and the heroin, you know. We knew that back then. So I was actually militant, left. I wasn't one of them, but in the same household I was in, people were making weathermen. They called them weathermen. If you know the Bob Dylan song, "You Don't Need a Weatherman to Know Which Way the Wind Blows," they're talking about those guys making bombs, you know. So, yeah, it was all about demonstration, and I look at it as that we stopped the war in Vietnam. We put enough pressure on the government. We had these things called moratoriums. We just sit and like not move. I mean, now you try to do it and you're going to get tear gas. But back then, they left you alone, you know?
Tear gas back then.
Oh yeah, many times actually. I had a camera. So it's like a Nikon FTN. They went after the people with cameras. I mean, I remember jumping over walls and, you know, running away from the San Francisco police, swinging clubs, you know, taking pictures of bloody people that they actually took down. So
That's what I did. I ran up on the roof, and they couldn't reach me. I smuggled the tape to the 6 o'clock news. So if you
oh my
see
God,
people in
great.
Berkeley with their kids getting their heads bashed in by the cops, that's my film. I'm proud of that.
Yeah. Now everyone's on the phone. It's like so commonplace. It's like, oh, that's happening again, you know. So my answer is very slanted that way. I still believe in that social change could be made by a group of people banding together and staying together, you know. I'm not making any bombs or anything. But, and I'm not per se really politically active right now, you know. I mean, I sign petitions, that's kind of what I do. And, you know, whenever there's a big gathering, you know, there was one a couple of years ago that everybody went to, you know, there's a few of those things. But in my heart, I'm still a rebel, a radical, and believe that there is a way. My hero, literally my model, okay, for decades was Thich Nhat Hanh. I mean, he is totally involved in the politics of everything. And yet, he also brings to the forefront how important it is to not judge people. If you go with anger, you're only going to get more anger. How much time do we have?
I think we can probably just call it good. Maybe I could do like a closing or.
Actually, there's something I wanted to read.
Okay.
Let's see if I have it. I haven't opened this thing like for a long time. These are the book of my readings. But this is one from Thich Nhat Hanh. Here it is right in the front. Great. Oh, I have to say that tonight really is the focus to me is Ramana Maharshi. I mean, it's like you said, and it's so true, that there's something that comes from his eyes. One of the things, being around a lot of the people who are alive that knew him in the ashram, you know, over the decades living around the ashram people, they would always say something like, well, he had consciousness supreme, right? He had that state of merging. But the thing that was most said about him was not that. It was that they describe Ramana as the embodiment of love itself. And that's what comes through the pictures. I mean, if I come back here, I have like 100 huge, like this big pictures, like this big. They're all in a tube, like 100 of them. So maybe I'll bring them by. He has a story that I like, feels like summarizes everything, right? And then I want to end with this poem. The story that he says encapsulates his teaching is, he says that when we are, and this also has to do with purpose too, okay? One thing that's clear, he states, is that we are all here for a reason. But we may not really know what that is. But just to understand, first of all, we're all here for a reason. He said it's like the train analogy he gives. He says it's like at your birth, you're given a suitcase, right, to take on a train. And your purpose in life is to get on the train, go the full route to the destination, and then when you deliver the luggage to the assigned place, your life is over. Your purpose is fulfilled, right? So he says people get it really mixed up, though. They don't realize, he says, that what most people do is while they're delivering the suitcase, and like, you know, could be, let's say there's a 50-pound suitcase, right? In India, this is what they do. They have a little thing on their head, and, you know, a little cloth, and they put it on their head and they carry it around like that. And he says that's how most people carry their suitcases in life. It's like this heavy weight, but you're not realizing, it's like, oh man, my neck is really sore. Maybe I should like do a workshop on like how to release my neck, or maybe I need to see a chiropractor and not even realize this is going on. So he said we make the mistake that we feel like we are the one carrying the luggage, when in fact it would get there every bit the same as if you put it in the luggage rack and go from there. So Ramana Maharshi says at this point, his suggestion, his advice to you is to put down the suitcase. And this is my invitation to everyone here, is to put down that suitcase of this heavy thing of what you're here for in life. The train is going to carry it. What you could do is take a place by the seat and enjoy the scenery. All right. So this is really have to highlight Thich Nhat Hanh here. Let's see, what book is this from? I don't have it referenced. This is a piece he did called Call Me By My True Names. I remember him in the 60s during the Paris Peace Talk. He was my hero in the 60s even, yeah. After the Vietnam War, many people wrote to us in Plum Village. We received hundreds of letters each week from the refugee camps in Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, and the Philippines. Hundreds each week. It was very painful to read them, but we had to keep in contact. We tried our best to help, but the suffering was enormous, and sometimes we were discouraged. It is said that half the boat people fleeing Vietnam died in the ocean. Only half arrived at the shores of Southeast Asia. There were many young girls, boat people, who were raped by sea pirates. Even though the United Nations and many countries tried to help the government of Thailand prevent this kind of piracy, sea pirates continued to inflict much suffering on the refugees. One day we received a letter telling us about a young girl on a small boat who was raped by a Thai pirate. She was only 12, and she jumped into the ocean and drowned herself after the rape. When you first learn of something like this, you get angry at the pirate. You naturally take the side of the girl. As you look more deeply, you may be able to see it differently. If you take the side of the girl, that's easy. You only have to take a gun and shoot the pirate. But we can't do that as Buddhists. Yeah, that's very true. In my meditation, I saw that if I were born a pirate, if I was born in the village of the pirate and raised in the same conditions he was, it would be easy for me to become a pirate myself. In my meditation, I saw that many babies born along the Gulf of Siam, hundreds every day, and if we educators, social workers, politicians, and others do not do something about the situation, in 25 years a number of them will become sea pirates. That is certain. If you or I were born in one of those fishing villages, we might become a sea pirate in 25 years. If you take a gun and shoot the pirate, you shoot all of us, because all of us, to some extent, are responsible for the whole state of affairs. After a long meditation, I wrote this poem. In it, there are three people: the 12-year-old girl, the pirate, and me. Can we look at each other and recognize ourselves in each other? The title of this poem is called Please Call Me by My True Names, because I have so many names. When I hear any one of those names, I have to say yes. So here's the poem. Do not say that I'll depart tomorrow. Even today, I am still arriving. Look deeply. Every second I am arriving to be a bud on a spring branch, to be a tiny bird with still fragile wings, learning to sing in my new nest, to be a caterpillar in the heart of a flower, to be a jewel hiding itself in some stone. I still arrive in order to laugh and to cry, to fear and to hope. The rhythm of my heart is the birth and death of all that are alive. I am the mayfly metamorphosizing on the surface of a river. I am the bird which, when spring comes, arrives in time to eat the mayfly. I am the frog swimming happily in the clear water of a pond, and I am the grass snake that silently feeds itself on that frog. I am the child in Uganda, all skin and bones, my legs as thin as bamboo sticks. And I am the arms merchant selling deadly weapons to Uganda. I am the 12-year-old girl, refugee on a small boat, who throws herself into the ocean after being raped by a sea pirate. And I am the pirate, my heart not yet capable of seeing and loving. I am a member of the Portoboro with plenty of power in my hands. I am the man who has to pay his debt of blood to the Portoboro, dying slowly in a forced labor camp. My joy is like spring, so warm it makes flowers bloom all over the earth. My pain is like a river of tears, so vast it fills the four oceans. Please call me by my true names, so I can hear all the cries and laughter all at once, so I could see that my joy and pain are one. Please call me by my true names, so I could wake up, and so the door of my heart can be left open, the door of compassion. Thank you for satsang.
Thank you, Ramana. Just a couple closing notes. There will be this Saturday private sessions with Ramana, and I'll have a schedule. I think there are 4 or 5 slots open. We have some food by Linda. Thank you for bringing the snacks.
Yay.
And there are some books on sale. I think they're like 10,
Yeah.
and they're $10 each. And
I want to say that those are, there is a link in there where you can download like about 180 minutes of recordings in there, which actually, it's not like a private session, you're hooked up about feedback, but it does take you through the steps. You get an idea what that's like. And I normally sell them, they're on Amazon for $15.95, so I thought I'd like give it to y'all for like $10, something even that you can, since we're not dealing with, I don't know, PayPal or anything, I also wanted to mention too, and we talked about this originally a long time ago, but if there is an interest in a weekend workshop with me, let Dennis know. Just drop him a note and say, it sounds good, let's do I have a special puja that I do to Arunachala. People tell me it's the most moving thing that I do for everybody. So I'd like to do that, and I usually start my weekend workshops with that, with a puja to Arunachala. A puja, by the way, if you don't know what the word is, it's a spiritual ceremony. And there'll be a lot more, if you're interested, there'll be a lot more information on that as well. You could take the Friday, but the Saturday and Sunday workshop, you kind of have to let me know what you want to do, all right? If you want a satsang weekend, that's pretty easy for me. I just get in front and answer questions and talk and stuff. But one thing that's much more challenging for me, but I really like, is doing a radical awakening workshop. And that is like you going into a radical awakening and then teaching another person to go through it. So you have the skills to, I like the idea of, there's this whole idea of a candle, and everybody gets around and, gets the heat from the candle, but I'm much more of let's get as many candles lit as possible, The first one I did in Beverly Hills, my friend Suzanne Taylor's house, it's people were crazy. Suzanne, who sponsored it, she would just take anybody who's working and say, I'll pay you your fee, but just sit here, I want to take you through this, She took it really serious. Holy mackerel, he's a carpenter. So anyway, I haven't done one of those in many, many years. Mostly what I do are satsang weekends, but, if people are interested in passing the candle on, getting to awaken yourself, but that's not enough, You learn how to share it with another, Okay, and I want to thank Dennis for for making this all possible.
Oh, it's my joy. Lastly, like we're going to have it's a donation basket that we'll have over there on the table over there near the books. If you want to chip in for gas and whatever else, that's most welcome. Thank you so much, Rama, for coming and sending this and transmitting this love and this peace and this connection to Source, to the Absolute that you bring. And for those of you online, if you are interested, you can leave a message in the chat and I'll get back to that. And if you want a session, those of you who are online on Facebook or YouTube, also leave a message there, or
Yeah.
you can contact me directly.
Yeah, contact him. I think we have 4 slots open for Saturday.
4
so-
slots, okay. So come see me right away to fill up those slots, and then that will be on Saturday, this Saturday. Good night, everybody. God bless you. I hope you enjoyed and got something from this. We sure did.
Great. Yay.